Morning, everyone. Welcome to your ethics training overview. Before you take the full course, as your manager, I want you to keep in mind some of the concepts and ideas that I will be going over with you now. And as leaders, it's important that you go through this ethics training and, really get a grasp of it, right? It helps our agency with transparency and accountability, but more so guidance, right? Whether if the public is looking at us or, more importantly, your employees. As department heads, you should show leadership and set a good example throughout the organization. Now, as you go through the bulk of your ethics training, you're going to go through a lot of principles and theories that you might not be familiar with, like virtue ethics, utilitarianism, or principle. But I like to sort of give you an overview and sort of encompass everything with the ethics triangle, right? You're going to have your duty, right? Your job. Each of you will be in charge of different departments. Each of you will have different leadership styles, right? And you can encompass all of the ethics that you will be taught, right? And mold and shape that. And in different situations, whether it be with council or the public or myself, you're going to come across different scenarios, right? And I like for you to all apply different scenarios, not just use one specific perspective, right? We all know that there is no silver bullet when it comes to solving issues of the public. And you will run into different scenarios, right? Whether you experience it yourself as a department head or if an employee has a question or a dilemma that he brings up to you, right? Do you follow, your sort of virtues on how you are, accustomed to, right? Your cultural background, but matching also what your duty is, right? In this perspective, right? You have a job to do, right? You have to serve the public, and in different situations, you can apply different theories there, right? If it's utilitarianism, right? For example, you know, do you make that decision based off of the greater good, right? And what would you sacrifice based off of that? You may have to, move on to, sort of rule based, right? What, your principles are. But more importantly, the core foundation is what the principles are for the organization. So speaking of the principles of the organization, right? That's why we have code of ethics and conduct for each organization, right? Whether you are working for City Hall now or if you're working for the county or the state, there's going to be different core values, different principles, but it also goes towards accountability. Right. It's important to have the core values listed under a code of ethics, right? It's a good guidance for the entire organization. It's a good guidance for you as leaders. It's a good guidance for me, right? To be held accountable to a list of ethics that's important to the agency, right? Therefore, everybody sort of knows what the organizational culture is and what the principles are. And more importantly, as leaders, as department heads of this organization, um, your employees are always watching and observing, right? Whether if you're signing off on PTO, paid time off, sick leave, or allowing employees to have flex time, right? When you're working through the schedule, um, you have to be ethical, right? When you're going forward, or even just answering a simple question, you have to be consistent, right? If you're doing a favor for your employees or making certain changes, that affects the employees because they're always watching, right? They're looking at you as leaders to see how your ethics are, right? If you make certain you know exceptions or other things that may be questionable, that's going to bleed through the entire organization, right? Sooner or later, your employees are going to follow what you do, right? You are going to have supervisors under you, and they're going to have line workers under them, right? And in this hierarchy or bureaucracy, you need to understand that you are the most important person to set an example as far as ethics goes throughout the organization. Now, moving forward, as department heads, you are going to face quite a bit of dilemmas, right? Whether it be how you're going to treat your employees, what kind of decisions you're going to make on behalf of the public. As leaders of this organization, um, you know, you're gonna be worried about fairness, justice, equality, right? And as I mentioned before, every one of you has a different leadership style. I'm not there to micromanage you as department heads. However, when you do come to a dilemma, as I mentioned, look at the ethics triangle, right? See which best applies there for you as far as the duty that you need to perform, right? And at the end of the day, you have to think about transparency, accountability, and being consistent, right? If all else fails, it doesn't matter which theory you lean towards, whether it be utilitarianism, virtue, or principle, right? Base those things on these three core values of this agency, and you should be able to get the problem sort of solved, for the majority of the time, right? And if you do have any more issues beyond that, feel free to come to me, right? I'm here to support you and to guide you. And again, as leaders, and for myself, it's important that we carry this sense of ethics across the board, right? People are looking towards us for guidance, are looking towards us for leadership, right? And so we need to set the bar high for ourselves so that we have an ethical environment throughout the organization. So keep these things in mind as you go through your ethics training, and if you have any more questions, please let me know.